Great Scott! If my calculations are correct, you are listening to this before your fantasy football drafts have taken place. I've been to the future, and those that followed the advice from the Fantasy Footballer's Ultimate Draft Kit had a spectacular season and withstood many victories. It's almost as if Biff had given each of them a copy of Gray's Sports Almanac. I'd highly recommend heading over to www.ultimatedraftkit.com without any further delay.
Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers Podcast, coming to you from Draft.com Studios with your hosts, Andy Holloway, Jason Moore, and Mike Wright.
Great Scott! We're back again. Back by popular demand from a couple days ago. Tuesday, April 17th. Welcome back. We have our early tight end rankings on today's show. Everyone is here. Everyone is present in mind and body.
Let's slow down there a little bit.
I'm
here in body. I am physically here.
Oh, okay.
We never know my mental state.
No. And that's part of the fun.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they click subscribe, Jason, on iTunes.
And I thank them for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike is here.
Hey!
Always enthusiastic. Always excitable.
I was giving Jason his moment in the sun.
Was that the celery that you had at lunch? Is that why you're so amped up?
Oh,
a lot of natural caffeine in that celery.
What do you call a cut?
A stalk.
It's
a celery
yeah,
stalk.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. 4 giant stalks of celery. Not good.
Unhappy all the way.
Are there people out there that really take a bite of celery and go, "Yeah, this is it."
With peanut butter.
By
itself, Jason?
By itself.
Does ranch count?
No, I
Yes,
was
it
going to say,
counts.
does that count as by itself?
No.
I doused my celery in ranch just so I could get it down.
A completely by itself bite of celery. No. Nobody goes, "Oh, my good Jim, get in here. You got to try this. It's so good."
It's like putting Gore in your lineup. Frank Gore last year.
I tried to feed a stalk of celery to a bunny rabbit. I got kicked in the face.
Did you?
Yeah.
I hope that's
You ever
a true
been kicked
story.
in the face by a bunny?
I know this is
Strong
a bit
legs.
of, we have a great quick question. I'm going to get right to it. But I'm going to say this. The problem with dressing and stuff on carrots and celery is that the dressing taste is gone and you still have 3/4 of the chew left. That's the problem with putting it on vegetables.
You're not putting enough dressing, my friend.
Well,
That's where I lean.
that's the key. You can find us on Twitter at the FFBallers, Instagram.com/fantasyfootballers. The community is jointhefoot.com. Become a member of the Foot Clan and get access to Foot Clan leagues, an extra episode every week, bonus stats, projections, some secret things.
Secret.
Behind the curtain. You get to see behind the curtain. Quick question of the day. Can you compare streaming the quarterback position to streaming the tight end position? And that's a great question. I actually, before I saw Brooks put this in as the quick question, I had thought a little bit about, I wanted to go back and look at last year's stats and see how the top tight ends did, the top quarterbacks did, and then compare it to the next 10. Just how those finished, the next 10 finished. And they're the same. I actually thought there might be a disparity between if you had Gronk, Kelce, and Ertz compared to like the average score of the next 10. I thought that gap would be larger than the top 3 quarterbacks in the next 10. It was the same. It was about 4 points per game difference if you average the top 3 at the position and compare it to the next 10. I don't know if I gave you an answer saying that, other than the fact that the score, the difference between the top tier guys and then that next category of, streaming player is about 4 points.
Yeah, one of the you can argue actually for it and against it. There's kind of two countering arguments. One says that at quarterback you're replaceable value, right? You've got a ton of great quarterback options, far more than 12 good startable quarterbacks. So you could play off the waivers. Tight ends, you've got 3 good ones and then a bunch of garbage.
Yes.
And so you can make the argument that it's worth having one of those tight ends so that you don't have to play, that crazy game. But the other side of that is what happens is quarterbacks are pretty consistent. They're always putting up points. Tight ends, you looked at the end-of-year rankings, Andy, where you say the difference is not so much. But the tight ends after those top 3, they are as inconsistent as possible, and it's very matchup-based. So you want to get those streaming tight end options when they're playing those juicy tight end matchups, and I think you can stream as successfully there. It's a little bit more annoying because there's not as good of a pool of players to choose from.
It's inconsistent. And here's the thing, though. You're talking about the top 3 guys. Zach Ertz was not drafted to be one of the elite tight ends.
He was by me.
Fair.
I
we liked him to break out, but Gronk hit, Kelce hit.
Let me illuminate something on the stats real quick.
Okay.
If you do the same examination to the running back position, the gap is 10 points.
Between the top 3?
Between the top 3
per
and then
game?
the next 10 on a per-game basis.
Okay.
So
what did you say it was for the tight end?
4.
Yeah.
I'm just making the point.
Yes.
That's why you stream. I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead and finish what you're saying.
A top 3 running back is dominant. But I lean with the streaming philosophy, which I'm sure we'll talk about in today's show. Like I said, Ertz was about an 8th-round pick. You had Greg Olsen, Jordan Reed, Tyler Eifert, Jimmy Graham, which Graham finished okay, Martellus Bennett, Delanie Walker. Those guys were all drafted in front of Zach Ertz. So if there's people out there saying, whoa, we drafted Zach Ertz to be this, people did not.
True.
People did not do that last year.
If you take the argument to the extent that, man, I just don't want to deal with tight end, I'm just going to grab one of those awesome automatic guys. Unless they get hurt.
Right. Well,
and then you waste the draft capital and you lose the draft flexibility.
Recall the names that I said. Those guys were all drafted above Ertz. And then here rounding out your top 10, Evan Engram, Kyle Rudolph, Jack Doyle, Cameron Brate, Jason Witten. I didn't say any of those names who were drafted to be a top tight end, but there they are because that's just what happens when the ebbs and the flows of a tight end getting a good matchup, pulling in a couple more touchdowns than the other guys. That's how you win at the position.
Well, the beauty of today's show is not only are we going to give you our top 10 consensus tight end rankings, but we're also each going to give you a sleeper outside of those ranks that we think could finish there. So if you're looking for that diamond in the rough, we're going to give you some early names that we think have the potential to do it, to get into that category, to be that steal. Because if you steal a tight end late that you're drafting to stream and they become an every week starter, that's when your team can do a lot of damage.
Yeah.
Same thing goes with quarterback position. So I did want to remind everybody, if you haven't listened to the previous shows, we did running backs and wide receivers, our early rankings right before that. We did free agency winners and losers at the end of March. We have our early mock draft up from the end of March. A lot of older shows before this one, very valuable. If you haven't listened, if you're joining us for the first time, first of all, welcome. You're not going to regret it.
Glad you made it past the celery takes.
Yeah. We always start with some good veggie takes.
To be fair, I think we sucked a lot of people in with that. It's not a hot take to
it's
say
a relatable, disgusting
to say
product.
that celery sucks. I mean, you've got 95% of the market with you.
So they came for the celery takes. They're staying for the football.
fantasy, yeah.
I like what these guys are thinking about.
Yeah.
Celery sucks.
I hate celery too.
Oh, those add-ons though are delicious. I like ranch and peanut butter.
Those add-ons.
I don't know.
Have you ever ordered them at a restaurant as an add-on?
Yeah, can I get an add-on? I'd like some ketchup, please. A ketchup add-on?
Today you ordered mustard for your fries.
Oh, please. We don't have time
All
for
right,
that.
we don't have time for that. All right. By the way, a couple quick notes. One, we're recording this show a little bit early, so if any incredible breaking news that you're amazed we haven't talked about is not in the show, it is only because of that. And we're doing that. Brooks is heading out of town for a little while, and frankly, we need him.
We will.
Yeah. Frankly, we have to admit at this point in time, we need Brooks to do the show.
We will definitely cover everything, whether it's on the next show. Make sure you're following our social media, too, because we're not disappearing from existence.
No, just
so,
a few days early.
Yeah, we'll share our takes on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook.
But one thing we didn't get to talk about, from a couple shows ago when we were discussing, I don't even know, Jordan Matthews,
has
signed a 1-year contract with the Patriots. Which apparently equates, in Mike's mind, signing that contract equates to him being a good fantasy player, which unfortunately hasn't been the case for the past couple of years.
No, it's simply equates.
It's validation that you and Bill Belichick are in the same sphere of thought.
You're darn right. If you look at my dynasty squad, everyone who becomes a Patriot, they're on my roster.
You consider yourself a good talent evaluator.
I'm basically a talent scout for the New England Patriots.
Basically.
Which, it's a
unpaid.
It's a heavy burden.
Unpaid.
But the thing
not
is,
invited.
I had talked about on a previous show that I think that Dorsett is going to get a chance. To me, Jordan Matthews will get the chance to be the number 3 wide receiver. Whether or not he can formulate and mold into what the Patriots want to do with their play calling and how they run concepts. I read this fascinating article about the Patriots, how they run just concepts instead of strict plays.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really an incredible read. I apologize, I don't know the name of the article. But if Jordan Matthews can get into that, I think that he has the advantage because both Philip Dorsett and Kenny Britt can be cut with 0 dead cap. We don't know the numbers of Jordan Matthews' contract, what is guaranteed to him or not.
It's
probably 1 year, though.
It's probably nothing.
Yeah, it's probably very
It's
low.
most likely that he's not guaranteed anything, and then you have 3 players that could all be actually valuable because of the Belichick way, the Patriot way
of stealing players from the Bills,
and they could be cuts too. I mean, you've had players come in. Reggie Wayne was part of camp a few years ago, and Tim Tebow was part of camp. They didn't make the final roster. We don't know, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I think Jordan Matthews is worse than Dorsett or Britt. I don't. I think he's better than those guys, assuming he's healthy. I think things have been blown out of proportion on my hate for Matthews. I just don't think he's got a very narrow skill set. That's the gist of my view of him. So I think it can be done by a lot of different players if you give them volume. But hey, nice piece to add to that after losing Cooks.
If your skill set is to be a very good slot receiver, can you name a better team to play on than the New England Patriots?
Yes, I could, because they have Julian Edelman. I don't think that – I mean, that would be the argument against it. Mike, you talked about Matthews being used almost like a tight end in their system when they used to do the 2 tight end sets. Maybe it's Gronk and Matthews and Edelman's outside, or I don't know. We don't know what they're going to do.
It'll be very interesting to see what happens.
I have an email out to Belichick to see. I want him to clarify. I'm inviting him on.
Yeah, it's not,
open invitation
to
Bill Belichick.
It is not confirmed yet, not denied yet, but he could be on the show someday.
Yes. We'll see what happens.
All right.
But, yeah, we'll move on. We'll get into the tight end rankings.
Hey, before we jump into the tight end rankings, want to thank Fantasy Champs for sponsoring today's show.
Heck yeah.
You got to check out Fantasy Champs for all of your fantasy football gear, all your trophies, rings, and belts. And right now, ladies and gentlemen, we talk about the drafts approaching, and we know that there's people out there, a good amount of you, that use the physical draft board. Well, you can get your pre-order in over at Fantasy Champs for the 2018 Fantasy Draft Board. I encourage you to go check it out.
Yeah, all the names will be in there.
Of course.
The whole board. You save money if you use the promo code BALLERS.
Yeah, that's it. FantasyChamps.com. The promo code is BALLERS.
Yeah, and we also want to remind everybody the Ultimate Draft Kit is available for pre-order. It's the cheapest price you can get it all year long. If you're unfamiliar, the Ultimate Draft Kit, that is our Magnus Opus, or whatever that word is.
That's what it is.
It's what we pour ourselves into. If you love this show, you want to help support
Magnum Opus. Magnum, not Magnus.
Magnum Opus.
Isn't Magnus a very strong man?
A Magnum Opus is
also make
it's
sense.
a masterpiece.
Oh, yes, it is.
It's the greatest work of a writer, an artist, a composer.
But this, we've had this out for several years in a row, and there have been great success stories from the Ultimate Draft Kit using the tier-based methodology, having breakdowns on players, and really going into your draft much better prepared than the old-timey magazines that are outdated, and not just outdated in content, but outdated in actual today's methodology of winning fantasy football. So if you want to win at fantasy football, go to ultimatedraftkit.com. Do it now in pre-order. Launches June 1st.
Sounds like a plan.
Tight ends.
Tight ends.
Everyone in that old, the strongman competition, 50% of them are named Magnus.
Really?
Yeah.
Did not know that. Magnum opus.
Fight like this.
Jason is always
I'll challenge you to fisticuffs.
simultaneously genius and just a bit off of that.
Yeah, I'm like idiot savant is kind of what I go for.
It's like you paint the Mona Lisa but with a mustache.
And finger paint.
All right, number one, guys, it's Rob Gronkowski. Number one on our consensus tight end ranks. Everything here is based on a half point per reception scoring system. We all have him at number one, consistent, the number one most consistent tight end last year. He had over 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns, played 14 games, which in his mind is 16.
Hey, I'd be happy.
Yeah, and
Still finished number one. So.
yeah, he's had four number one finishes since 2011. 3 out of the last 4 years he's been number one. The gist is when he's on the field, he's the best tight end. It's an easy case. So where does he – go ahead, Mike.
I said over 50% of his games are what we break down as great games, and no one else is even
Not
close.
just good.
Great. This is like an elite tight end finish. No one else comes close to this. For Gronk, the discussion every single year comes down to draft price. Last year, he was coming off of a down year where he missed a vast majority of the season, so he was a little bit cheaper. Now he's the number one tight end. His price will probably boomerang back up to, I would imagine, early second round. I don't think he'll make it back to the first, but early second round. So unfortunately, that becomes a place where I'm not willing to pay the draft price.
What's fascinating, and I know this is really early. Good ADP is not set, but I feel like Gronk has not gotten the buzz that he usually gets after one of the number one years.
Huh.
And if you look at the early average draft position, he is right where he was last year, actually a little bit behind where he was last year. And last year he was an extreme value. We drafted Gronk in a lot of different places. He is the one tight end right now that I think I will desire to have. If I'm in the middle of the second, I would take Gronk. He is that big of a difference maker, and so I'm willing there.
It's probably it's at the late second right now because of the rumors about his possible retirement.
Yes.
I do agree with Mike, though. I don't think it gets into the first round. Your price for these guys right now is basically you're going to spend a second rounder on Gronk, you're going to spend a third rounder on Kelce, and you're going to spend a fourth rounder on Ertz. And so that's where they're going right now. And I would expect it to be right for the regular season. So that's the cost that you're going to have to give up a big position player somewhere else. And look, if Gronk slips to the back of the second round and I'm in that draft,
I'm okay with it.
I'm going to think about that.
Yeah.
Like you said, Jay.
When you give up another big important position player, you have to have basically the best. And that's why, like, Kelce will never be drafted by me next year. I'm not giving up a big important positional player for a really good tight end who has a lot of question marks. And even though I love Zach Ertz, he's got question marks too. We'll talk about those two guys. But Gronk to me is the only of the big three that I will actively try to target.
Well, our consensus number two, my number two, Jason's number two, is Zach Ertz. And I have Ertz ahead of Kelce because there are less variables there for me. Kelce, while he has been elite longer, is changing quarterbacks. And
is Ertz changing quarterbacks?
No, he's not.
To start the season.
No, he's not.
So you have 100% faith that Carson Wentz is ready to go week one?
Yes,
okay.
I do, which has been all of the news that we've had as well. It's not just me speculating. I don't really like having to do this again because of the Andrew Luck situation last year.
At this point last year, Andrew Luck was playing week one.
Correct. But that doesn't mean that Wentz isn't
going to.
No,
of course it doesn't. Just saying there are a little bit more risks.
110 targets, okay. So he's in that same range last year, more than Gronk, less than Kelce. 110 targets, 74 for 824 and 8 touchdowns. Obviously a monster year. Finished the year at number 3. And frankly, look, he's the best pass-catching weapon that the Eagles have. Caught, almost 20 more passes than Alshon Jeffrey did in that offense. He's reliable, 58 yards a game. Jason, why do you have him at 2 over Kelce? Same reasons, or?
Yeah, very, very similar reasons. I do expect Carson Wentz to be back. I don't think he's going to be the same mobile quarterback, but if he's in the pocket, his first read was Zach Ertz. The breakout was clear with Ertz. He is an extremely talented pass catcher, a mismatch all over the field. I believe that the target volume, I am supremely confident it will be there with Zach Ertz, whereas with Travis Kelce, now you have Sammy Watkins added to the mix, which will take some targets away. There's another weapon there that, you're not dealing really with that for the Eagles. I mean, Mike Wallace replacing Torrey Smith does not make me feel like the target share is going to change drastically.
I have Ertz at 3, so I still like him. But this is my devil's advocate cautionary tale for Zach Ertz. It's all about the touchdowns. And we talk frequently on this show that touchdowns can rise and fall with a high variance. Zach Ertz played 14 games both in 2017 and 2016. He only had 4 more targets last year. He actually had 4 fewer receptions, barely more yardage, but he went from 4 to 8 touchdowns. And 2 years ago, people were disappointed with what Zach Ertz did for them, for what they were expecting. And here's where it's somewhat cautionary. I mean, identical stats, but more touchdowns, and now everyone thinks that Zach Ertz is elite. Carson Wentz had a 7.5% touchdown rate. That's way too high. The league average is 4.3. Those numbers are going to come down. And Zach Ertz went from, in the red zone, 14 targets turning into 3 touchdowns to 18 targets turning into 8 touchdowns. I think Zach Ertz is great. He's still my number 3, but I want to at least have the caution out there that I don't think it's locked and loaded that you're getting a top 3 finish from Ertz.
Go ahead, Jay.
I was going to say, this is why we're debating the value of will Zach Ertz repeat. I want the target volume. I think that's there. The same argument with the Sammy Watkins red zone work. And the red zone work
I'm going to talk about it for
the
Kelce.
Touchdowns that were abnormally high for Kelce this last year, I think you've got the argument for both of these guys. That's why I said, even though I obviously I would love to have Kelce on my team, I'd love to have Zach Ertz, I'm not really targeting either of these guys because I think there's a bigger chance that they underperform the total stats they did last year. But because of what they did last year, their draft position is much higher than what we had in 2017.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, Kelce is our 3. He's Mike's 2. And the same argument can be made for him. Previous 3 years, 4 touchdowns. Last year, it jumped up to 8 touchdowns. He loses his quarterback. He actually had about 100 fewer yards last year, but the same beautiful 80-plus receptions. And that's what you got to love about Kelce. Obviously, you have stability with the head coach. They know what Travis Kelce can be. I'm not trying to overemphasize the quarterback change. But
now, Andy, I am a little surprised that Travis Kelce is your 3, considering Pat Mahomes you have slated for 82 touchdowns this year.
Yeah,
per game.
Top 2 quarterback, Pat Mahomes.
Your new man crush.
I like
Mahomes.
Pat Mahomes' potential, gentlemen.
Yeah, we
I'm
need to remember.
I'm excited to watch that offense.
For all intents and purposes, he is a rookie.
Yeah.
On the field.
And so my argument against Travis Kelce is if you pull out your podcast app.
Against him?
It just to make – he's my number 2.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying he was identical, just like Ertz. His stats, his yardage and receptions were almost identical, except he had 4 touchdowns 2 years ago and 8 last year. So
let's distill this then for the listener, because the message here is that you have regression points but possible for Ertz and Kelce.
Sure.
You can 100% bank on Rob Gronkowski to be a high touchdown guy because that's what he does.
Yeah.
Therefore, it might be better to wait and to value a guy like Engram or Henry or somebody else on this list. And so, Kelce, we have him at 3. You've heard the arguments for both guys. Let's talk about Evan Engram. Let's talk about some more of these interesting tight ends. I think Engram is a gamble in the sense that, look, you are either banking on him to repeat what he did last year on an offense that will get Odell Beckham Jr. back, which should have a healthy Sterling Shepard for the year, likely to add some more offensive pieces. Last year, he was the, 4th best tight end?
Last year, yeah, I think he was. Depends on scoring.
Consistency ranked number 4.
Yeah.
722 yards, 6 touchdowns, 115 targets. Can he repeat what he did, and does he belong here at number 4?
So he's my number 5. I don't quite have him repeating his performance from last year. I remember early in the offseason wanting to we had a segment where we were talking about regression or watch out for these, and I had Evan Engram as kind of my potential bust. Like, look, I know he had the best rookie tight end season for fantasy since Jeremy Shockey, even better. And, he's great, all that jazz. He came out to do this, but I was going to make the case against him because, like you said, he lost Odell Beckham. He lost Brandon Marshall, Sterling Shepard for part of the year. He was a huge center of the offense. But as I looked more and more, he was a rookie. He's going to take a step forward as a sophomore. His catch rate was actually atrocious.
It was real bad.
I mean, really bad. So if his targets go down or stay near the same, but he gets better at his craft at this tight end role and catches a higher percentage of the balls, especially when you have Odell Beckham taking defense away, I think he'll be near the same. I mean, I've got him 5. I'm pretty confident in his ability to be a quality tight end, but this is where, and we've said this for the last several years, I can't wait for the year that it changes and the tight end landscape is full of awesome studs. But right now
it could be that, though. I mean, you could have that with some of the names in this year's group. You don't just have the elder statesmen. You have guys like Jordan Reed that are going to be way down the list just because of injury, but he could actually perform.
Yeah, since
Are you talking about like coming into a season where that like 7 or 8 guys are going to do it?
Yeah, I guess my point is just I feel like all the middle tier guys, I just don't care enough about them. I'm pretty much a Gronk or I'm double-digit round drafting.
Since 1992, the only rookie tight end with 100-plus targets, the aforementioned Jeremy Shockey and Evan Engram. And the games where he played with Odell Beckham, he averaged about half a target fewer or less. I don't know the grammar for that, but he essentially was getting the exact same target share when Beckham was on the field compared to the rest of the season.
When you look at catch percentage, do you worry about Eli?
Maybe you can attribute that to him, but yeah, his catch percentage was 55.7, which
How
was
much?
Oh my goodness! Hit me! Hit me! Yeah!
I can't believe I had to call you out on that, Mike.
Because
there was a decimal involved.
It was 55.7.
Yeah.
55.7.
There you go.
But
0.7.
But that's and that's tight ends with over 100 targets. There were 6 players. His was by far the lowest. Second lowest was Gronk at 65.7. So you can look at it either way of saying it was very poor performance, or with like Jason was saying, is he going to get better? He was a first-round pick. They're going to continue to.
I don't think I want to spend a late 4th, early 5th on Evan Engram.
Yeah,
that's exactly my point.
That's rough.
I don't want to keep repeating this for every player, but basically
everyone
we're going to talk about, unless you're getting to like the 7th, 8th round, if I love you, I'm not drafting you at tight end. I'm just not. And I think it's
what
important.
A waste of a show.
But it's not.
Why are we even here?
It's not a waste of a show. It's just like going through rookies, which we'll do here pretty soon. You need to understand these players for the rest of the season because these guys will be dropped and traded and all that jazz.
All right.
But in the draft, don't do it.
All right. Don't draft our number 5 tight end, Hunter Henry.
Wait.
No, Jason will disagree.
Sorry, Jason has him at 4.
Jason's ready.
4, 5, 6.
He drops to the 7th.
He's ready for Goose.
Oh, my gosh. Do I have him? Here he is. That was a painful week.
Weeks 1 and 3.
1 and 3, yeah.
Yeah, nothing.
I just remember.
Squadoosh.
I remember the feeling. Didn't you lose by half a point one of those weeks?
Yes, I needed 1 catch for 7 yards in week 1.
There's a reason
Hunter
that Mike's
Henry.
the lowest on Hunter Henry. All right, 14 games last year, 45 receptions, 579 yards, 4 touchdowns. Pedestrian numbers. Tight end 14 on the year. This is all about, I think, the torch being passed,
yes.
right? The baton being passed.
Don't
pass the torch. It's very hot.
This is about.
Don't pass that.
It's not just about that. It's Hunter Henry being another year into the system and Antonio Gates, the Hall of Famer, being gone. Antonio Gates, look, he was a decrepit old man on the field last year.
Oh, come on.
He was, though. I mean, he didn't
decrepit
perform.
old men don't catch touchdowns, from my knowledge.
Sure, he had. Put it this way: Antonio Gates had 11 red zone targets, which converted into only 3 touchdowns. He had 500 snaps. Antonio Gates was very involved. If Hunter Henry takes over the predominant pass-catching tight end role that has always been with Phillip Rivers, and always he also has the talent and skills.
Because he's always had Antonio Gates.
Yeah.
But Hunter Henry was a highly touted. I mean, I'm not saying Hunter Henry is Antonio Gates. It's going to be a Hall of Famer, but I'm also saying it's not like I'm not sitting here going, well, the next guy up who was drafted in the 5th round has an opportunity and Phillip Rivers goes to him. No, Hunter Henry was a super highly touted, highly drafted
second-round draft pick.
Yeah, well, I mean, he was talked about as a first-round draft pick, fell to the 2nd.
He wasn't happy. He wasn't happy with you saying 2nd, which
sounds like they weren't very pleased with the first-round chatter then. If he dropped all the way to the 2nd, like a bum.
The second round is pathetic. Look, this is one of the hardest things in fantasy football is to imbue another player with the responsibility of replacing a Hall of Famer. We tried to do this with various tight ends in New England to replace Aaron Hernandez. That didn't come to fruition.
Gronk too,
but they weren't high pedigree guys. And
exactly.
to Jason's point, that does not mean. Look, year 1, 34 receptions. Last year, 45. Do we think he's going to be in the 60 reception range? And you're hoping for double-digit touchdowns, 8 touchdowns? You'll be really happy if that happened.
Yes, I will.
He's just 23. So I like him. I do like him because I like the offense.
It takes tight ends a couple of years. You're disappointed in Hunter Henry, but you shouldn't be because he's only played 2 years at tight end. Usually you don't break out within those first 2 years. The fact that he has
Evan Engram disagrees,
sure,
Jason.
I said usually. The fact that he has disappointed owners should show how good he was because his expectation was probably too high. Give him that opportunity. And look, every single year, you look at the fantasy finish of people, and the ranks change. I'm calling for a change for Hunter Henry. He's going to be great. And if he is dropping to the 7th or 8th round, this is the first tight end that –
Is there any chance –
I want to take a swing at a guy who could finish top 5 and be consistent. That's Hunter Henry.
Is there any chance they they do Antonio a solid because he says he still wants to play and he's a free agent and they could bring him back on a 1-year deal and make you just
cry,
weep?
Yeah.
I think it could still happen. I hate to say it.
Yeah, no,
they did sign Virgil Green. So if you want to be comforted by the fact that they're at least making plans without him, but I don't know.
That's to me that's a big check mark for Hunter Henry. Because Virgil Green is a block. He's a blocking tight end. Enough of Jason is blocking.
Yeah, I gotta show.
You look like your white dad trying to raise the roof.
I'm raising the walls. See,
hey,
but push it out,
but
fellas.
From the 20s, apparently. The roaring 20s.
Last year, when Hunter Henry was the goose, it's because he had to stay in and block. He couldn't get out and run these routes. So that's a check mark.
All right.
Tight end number 3 next year.
All right, number 6 on our list. Mike's number 5, Jason 6, my 7. Is a player that look, here's a little behind the scenes. His picture may not be on the bathroom door of one of our 2 restrooms here at the studio.
You want to talk
and
about
it's Jason's fault.
Fantasy burns,
it's his fault,
where when a player just absolutely destroys you and tanks your season, and you feel that sting. And we talk about on this show,
sometimes you buy a canvas
next
of
time,
that player.
Next year, you got to be forgiving. Well, Jason took out his vengeance.
I was forgiving with him as far as fantasy goes, but not as far as commemoration. I needed that bathroom with a large Greg Olsen poster canvas.
How are you going to do Olsen so dirty?
I know. Well, what's crazy is
we have Jeff Fisher on one bathroom, we have Greg Olsen on the other, and when somebody needs to do their business, it's like,
not fair because
I'm heading to Olsen or I'm heading to Fisher.
The year prior in the League of Record, I won a championship with Greg Olsen, and then the following year, Greg Olsen, if you don't remember, this was 2 years ago, he was unfathomably great the first half of that season. He was Gronkian, and I traded for him to get back-to-back titles, and he was the tight end 18 for the second half of the year.
He was so good that he still finished the year the third best tight end.
That's how good he was the first half that I didn't have him for.
All right, so last year, injury-marred season, Olsen getting older, changes to that offense. He had finished in the top 7 for 5 straight years.
3 straight years of 1,000 yards, an incredible feat for a tight end. And I have Greg Olsen.
Speaking of feet.
I love it.
Yeah, he did have the broken foot. I'm giving Greg Olsen a pass, and I'm choosing to believe that he can still put up the 1,000-yard type of a season. From 2012 through 2016, his catch rate was 65%. Even with Cam Newton throwing the ball, great catch rate. Last year, it dropped all the way to 44.7. On 38 targets, only 17 receptions. I'm wiping the slate clean for Greg Olsen and choosing to believe that he will still be one of the premier fantasy tight ends. Once again, I don't know what his cost will be because he burned so many people. The foot is still a situation where frequently with the injury, guys have to go in for a second surgery. They're saying he doesn't need it as of now, but in the season that could suck and could change.
Yeah, I mean, that second surgery is usually something that happens in season. In game, oh, crap, yep, I'm going to need that second surgery. That surgery requires a redo about 20% of the time, which is a really large number. 1 in 5 require that second surgery. He has not had it yet. But if he is on the field and playing, if he doesn't need that surgery, he is going to be more consistent than most of these guys we've talked about already. I would bank on him. If every single one of these tight ends is playing 16 games and they're healthy, I'd take him over Evan Engram. I would
really? Over the upside of –
because I believe the consistency is important at the tight end position.
Yeah, they didn't add anything in the pass catcher department to make me think Olsen's not going to be heavily involved.
Right, so the reality is when I'm outside of the top 3 tight ends, I'm hoping that I nailed it. I'm hoping that I got Hunter Henry in the 8th and he's great and consistent, but I'm always expecting to drop this guy at some point. So if he gets hurt and re-injured, then so what? I drop him my stream.
Who
but
cares?
Until
so
that
what?
point, he will be a quality tight end. So I don't mind Greg Olsen. I hope he continues to slide.
Speaking of health, the salary at the tight end position has to be number 7 on our list. Delanie Walker.
Yeah,
I think that's a little too lowbrow for Delanie Walker. But I mean, he's
not flashy.
He's bland.
He's not. Is celery
You're
not the most
describing
bland?
celery.
You're
No.
describing celery.
Oh, celery's bad.
but
no,
it's got
celery's bland as can be.
But celery also
Brooks,
serves a purpose.
is celery bland?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And it serves a purpose. I
Yeah.
mean, you're eating those hot wings.
It carries raisins and peanut butter.
Ants on a log, my man.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean,
Fine, we'll put some peanut butter on the celery, and then we'll call
the
it
celery
Delanie
is
Walker.
really diverse as well. I mean, you could put that in adult beverages. You see it in children's snacks. You see it for hot wings. Like,
Here's the
good
problem.
for you, celery. I don't know how
Zero
you did it.
great
Overachiever.
games. You talked about how many elite tight end games that Gronk had. You don't get that with Delanie Walker.
Well, you didn't.
You got 0.
You didn't, and you won't, and you likely don't. Look, 3 touchdowns, 111 targets is what you love. 74 receptions. He was reliable. He was a check down. He's been great. I mean, I'm sure people will take that as great disrespect to call him celery. All I'm saying is that you kind of get what you get. You want to get somebody that is consistent. If he falls down the draft boards and not think about your position, it's kind of like Witten a couple years ago.
Yeah.
He's like Witten before we got even older.
The only problem is that Witten is a giant beast of a man who I think that helps him play into later age. Whereas Delanie Walker's, is
Delanie's a big boy.
Delanie's 6 foot, which is very small
He's
for
a big boy.
He is. He's 248. So
Delanie Walker is only 6 feet tall? You need to verify your source.
All right, let me
a
check.
A tight end that is 6 feet tall?
Okay,
Yeah,
I've got a different one that says 6'1", but this also shorts him 7.
6'2" on NFL.com. We're moving up.
Uh-oh.
But
we got who was the player?
Delanie's always been a shorter.
We got a Cameron Artis-Payne situation.
Yeah.
Delaney Walker's always been.
Well, he was wearing his lifts for this.
No lifts.
He's never been the prototypical 6'4", 250 guy.
No.
And my point is, he is getting up there
gonna be
in
34.
age. 34
Yes.
to play this season.
I mean, people that are 34 are pathetic.
and
I just turned 34.
Yes,
Yeah.
you did.
Um,
Here's the thing with Delanie Walker. The stats were practically identical, similar to Kelce and Ertz. He had 807 yards last year. The year before, 800. But he dropped from 7 to 3 touchdowns. But you have to look at his quarterback. Marcus Mariota, 26 touchdowns down to 13. a 5.8 touchdown percentage down to 2.9.
So do you like
coming
Delanie
back up.
or do you not like Delanie?
I like him.
Because they have Jonnu Smith.
Yes.
Delanie
Smith.
Walker is the first official member of my will not draft list. You want to know why? Because he's
Jonnu
a
Smith.
5th round pick.
Oh.
And I can draft.
Oh, no.
I can draft
Oh,
Hunter
no.
Henry, Jordan Reed, Jimmy Graham, Kyle Rudolph, Tyler Eifert.
Fine.
Any of those guys way behind him.
And let me just say this, because this is like a do it for me Foot Clan moment. Foot Clan, if you're in a dynasty league and you have, you're up there in age at the tight end position, you're like, man, who could I target? Go trade for Jonnu Smith, because I've really wanted to. I believe that Jonnu Smith is going to take over the Delanie Walker role and excel at it with Mariota. But the guy in our league loves him, and so I can't get him. So do it for me. You go trade for him, and you say, I got him, Jay. And I'll say, congratulations.
I think we got one more year.
Yeah,
of
no, I
Walker.
agree. I don't necessarily think this is the year. That's why I'm saying dynasty.
Delanie Walker has generally been on my do not draft list because he's usually costs too much, and I don't see that top 3 finish. So basically what Jason was talking about, swinging for the fences. But if Walker – I thought this would be the year that Walker would drop in ADP. So we'll see. If he's actually going, people are still buying in at last year's price, then no way.
All right, we got to move on to number 8, the slightly less handsome Jimmy G. Jimmy Graham himself coming in as my number 6. Jason's 8, Mike's 11. I know we've been down some dangerous roads with Green Bay Packer tight ends, but Jimmy Graham on a limited year with Seattle in terms of lining up for offensive snaps,
And practice.
which was only 68% of the time.
Which was 0% of the time.
Yeah, look, he had 10 touchdowns. He is great around the goal line. Mike, we just talked about Devontae Adams. The big sell. Every time I want to
Right.
doubt Devontae Adams, you go, Aaron Rodgers is going to throw for 35 touchdowns. Where do they go? Well, I don't think 30 of them are going to Devontae Adams. I don't think 20 are. I think Jimmy Graham's going to have a big red zone role. He's going to be somebody that you can count on to score more often than not in each and every game.
The problem with a tight end like that, though, I agree. At the end of the year, Jimmy Graham will be a top 7, 8 tight end for sure because of touchdowns. The problem is, will you want him on your team when he is the type of guy where you're going to start him every week, and if he doesn't get a touchdown, he'll probably end up with worthless stats.
Well, I don't know if
how
that's true. You think that's going to be the case for Jimmy
I
Graham?
100% think that Jimmy Graham is –
You don't think another year of getting
No.
into better shape?
No, I think it's another year of his body breaking down. He went from –
It's crazy, though, because he's the 4th best tight end 2 years ago, 4th best last year.
Yeah, but
Now he gets Aaron Rodgers.
He dropped from 14.2 yards per reception down to 9.1, the lowest of his career. He went from 57 yards a game down to 32.5, lowest since his rookie season. His catch percentage went way down, and Russell Wilson's a fine quarterback. It was the red zone touchdowns that saved him. But will that be enough for him in Green Bay? I know people are like Richard Rodgers. Yeah, Richard Rodgers had 8 touchdowns. He finished as the tight end 10 that year. He was not a top 5 guy with 8
Richard
touchdowns.
Rodgers is still finishing out one of his routes from 2 years ago. He is not what Jimmy Graham is athletically. I think what the best value in the draft might be Jimmy, because you can spend a 7th rounder, guarantee yourself some like week-to-week consistency Delanie Walker level play with actual upside of Aaron Rodgers and Jimmy Graham's athleticism.
I think Jimmy Graham.
I like him.
Jimmy Graham will get overdrafted this year.
The
reason he will get overdrafted is because he's got a big name. Now
You
he's
think
got
the
Aaron
7th
Rodgers.
round is a problem for him, though?
I think that's some average. In your league, someone's taking him in a 5th because they're a Packers fan who believes in Aaron Rodgers, and it only
it's not
takes
gonna
one
be
guy.
me in the 5th, that's for sure.
It only takes one.
But he's 6'7", Jason, and you're all height-based.
The best fantasy
true.
finish for a tight end who played for Aaron Rodgers was Jermichael Finley at the tight end 6
Yes.
in 2011. And that was a 24-year-old Jermichael Finley, not a
31-year-old.
31-year-old who had lost his kneecap a couple years ago.
Just found it.
Jimmy Graham, no, thank you.
All right, tied for 9. Kyle Rudolph, Jordan Reed.
Too low for Kyle.
Okay, whatever. I don't want to have another Kyle Rudolph battle. But Kyle Rudolph, Jordan Reed, kind of polar opposites when it comes to consistency. Look, you look at Kyle Rudolph, 16 games played, 16 games played, 16 games played. You know he's going to be out there. Last year regressed from that number 2 finish to number 7. 8 touchdowns, though. Gotta love that. 57 for 532. He doesn't catch passes for yardage.
No.
We know that about him.
Above 50 yards twice.
Yeah, he's a red zone above 50 yards 2 times.
2 times.
Yeah. So that you want to make that case about, you just made it about Jimmy.
Yes.
It applies for Kyle Rudolph for sure.
However, that is far more of an issue. I think that was a Case Keenum thing in the sense that he was, a yard lower per reception than the year prior when he had 840 yards. You've got a tight end 2 finish, a tight end 7 finish, and now he gets your boy Kirk Cousins. I mean,
he is my boy.
This is his whole. But we have 7 years now. I have to make the same argument about Kyle Rudolph. He is a player like Jordan Matthews with an exact certain skill set. Is not going to change.
My point is 9.3 yards per reception was a last year thing. If you look at the majority of his career,
he's 9.8 for his career.
He's 10.1. If you're taking his rookie year, and
I'm talking 3 different years.
From 2013 before last year, so a 4-year sample of him being in the prime of his career, he's 10.1 yards per reception.
And he dropped down to what?
9.3.
Okay, so he'll get to 60 yards per game twice.
60. What's crazy here is that sounds terrible,
And
but
I
60
like
yards for a tight end
do you ever,
is a good
do you ever
game
talk
when
about
you're
a
talking
player
about
and you have no clue why you'd be arguing the yards per catch between 9.3 and 10.1? Why does that matter? It doesn't matter.
One number is higher. It's better.
Thank you, Mike.
He'll
allow it.
I don't dislike Kyle Rudolph. I would rather wait and draft Kyle Rudolph than Jimmy Graham 100 times out of 100.
You want to wait and draft your guy, Jordan Reed? Number
Yes.
8 on Mike's list, 10 on Jason's, 11th on mine. Better have a backup plan.
Oh, yes.
And I'm talking to you, Redskins.
You need an emergency parachute.
But look, we've talked about it. He's elite. He's an elite receiver
2 years ago.
when he
or was
plays.
it with 3 years ago?
When he
2
played
years ago,
14
he was
games.
Still a top 10 tight end.
Yeah.
3 years ago, he was the second-ranked tight end, but last year was –
So this is an upside pick.
yeah, I mean, this is a swing for the fences. Take a pick late that could finish – I mean, most of the guys that you're taking late, they don't have top 3 potential. Jordan Reed has it at least. I don't think it's going to be actualized, and so you can just if you want to take Jordan Reed off your draft board, I got no qualms about that. But this is a risk versus reward, a type of draft guy where if you want to swing for the fences with your last pick and know that the odds are probably against you, but the upside is definitely worth taking that gamble, I got no problem with that, and that's pretty much how I look at tight end. So I'll have some shares of Jordan Reed for 1 week.
2 years ago, he was the 4th-round pick. 1 year ago, he was a 5th-round pick. Now he's a 7th-round pick.
Ooh, that's still too high.
That kind of tells you the trajectory of Jordan Reed. But the promise of a player like Reed is what tempts player. Do I want to go get Kyle Rudolph or do I want to spend the same type of pick on Jordan Reed with the potential of him being a top 5 guy? That'll depend on your team's makeup a lot of the times. Do you have other risky players on your team? Injury concerns? Or are you pretty solid and can take a shot on Reed? All right, 11 and 12 on our tight end rankings. Trey Burton.
Hey, Trey Boo-Boo.
And Tyler Eifert. I think some people surprised that these two names are in the top 12.
We snuck him in.
But Trey Burton is my 9, Mike's 9, Jason's 12. And
You're welcome.
look, you've given Trubisky weapons. Trey Burton is going to be in the Kelce role that's already come out. Nagy's talked about how he's going to use Burton. So you are certainly projecting here. But in the 2 games in which Zach Ertz was unable to play, Burton was the tight end 7 and the tight end number 1.
The ability is there. The athleticism is there. The usage. That's the huge question. But you give him that contract. You've already come out and say we're going to put him in the Travis Kelce role. And that Travis Kelce role, while Matt Nagy was the play caller for the Kansas City Chiefs, turned into 9 targets a game. So, yes, please, I'll take Trey Burton.
There's some comparisons to Delanie Walker when he was with San Francisco and playing second fiddle to Vernon Davis, and then Burton doing the same thing to Zach Ertz, and then getting that contract to go out and show people. He got paid to be a great tight end, to be a pass-catching tight end. I hope we can do it. I'd love to see it.
Yeah, and I would just say this. It's not just the 2-game sample from last year without Ertz. You go back 3 years, you got 5 games without Ertz, and he averages over 12 points PPR per game. If you look at the last 2 years, he's 14 points a game PPR without Ertz. You're exactly right. I've always loved Trey Burton. My ranking of him at 12 is not because of my belief in him. It's a little bit more worry about Trubisky, and I want to see preseason. He's going to be a guy, and by he, I'm probably speaking to everybody on the Bears, where I'm going to be watching.
It's universal.
I mean, this preseason, I'm going to be so focused on, are they clicking? Do they look like they're getting it done and moving the ball and getting guys in space, and that Trubisky is understanding it? Because the upside is certainly there for. I mean, if he finishes 6, 7, I wouldn't be surprised at all.
4 years, $32 million contract, 18 guaranteed. Signed to be a big-time tight end.
Adam Shaheen.
I know we're almost an hour into the tight end show, but this is finally the first tight end I'm actually excited to draft.
Tyler Eifert?
No, Trey Burton.
Oh, okay. I didn't think you were that excited about Tyler Eifert.
I mean, I'll take him.
But Eifert stays home, stays in Cincinnati. He is on the cusp of the tight end 2 area here. We all got him in about the same range, and we're just hoping he returns.
I mean,
he's still young.
This is Jordan Reed light. He's a talented guy who's got high touchdown potential, high usage history.
27 years old.
And but he's probably, going to miss games and be injured. The nice thing though is, I mean, if they both costed the same, I'd definitely lean Jordan Reed's route. But with Tyler Eifert, he might go undrafted in a lot of leagues this year. So when you have him with your last positional pick and you swing for the fences there, I'd rather do that than I'm never spending a 7th for Jordan Reed right now.
The last 3 years, he's only played in 23 games. That's very low. In those 23 games, though, 18 touchdowns.
Yeah.
That's insane.
There was a time we were talking about him in the same vein as Gronk, and he was producing touchdowns at a higher rate than Gronk during his heyday.
And Tyler Kroft, in that system, as the backup tight end, put up 7 touchdowns last year.
Man, Andy Dalton missed Eifert.
Yes.
Bad.
Big time.
As did A.J. Green. They needed those guys. All right, Gronkowski, Ertz, Kelce, Engram, Henry, Olsen, Walker, Graham, Rudolph, Reed, Burton, Eifert. All of our early season rankings will make their way to the website, thefantasyfootballers.com. Pretty soon, we've got the NFL draft coming up here, just days away. And let's finish with this. Name a sleeper tight end that we didn't mention in that top 12 that you think could actually finish in the top 10.
I'll kick it off here with Mr. Kittle and Bits himself, George Kittle.
I like this one.
George Kittle, 6'4", 247, coming into his sophomore year. A tight end that a lot of people liked coming out of college. He now has the good-looking,
the handsome one.
He has the handsome one throwing him the ball. San Francisco kind of struck out on adding that extra powerful wide receiver that everyone expected early.
The one note they also struck out on Trey Burton. There was a lot of whispers from the bushes they wanted that. So that's my only hesitation with Kittle, is that they wanted to replace him with Trey Burton.
Well, do you worry about Garrett Selleck at all?
No. I'm not.
I mean, because
really.
Selleck caught. I think he caught quite a few passes last year.
He did.
Yeah.
He actually stepped it up a little bit. But I think them going after Trey Burton shows that the tight end position matters for this scheme and this offense. And
or they're discontent.
It could be. But I mean, we're talking about a guy who's going late that could finish top 10. If that role matters and Jimmy Garoppolo, involves him in it, Kittle could take a sophomore step up.
I think a lot of people like Kittle and what he brings to the table.
And you can say Kittle in bits.
Yeah, great nickname. I'm going to go with David Njoku. I'm actually going to take the shot at David Njoku.
Oh,
the physical
my pineapple.
skills. Yeah, your pineapple.
My pineapple man.
From previous shows. The right player on the wrong team. But David Njoku actually might be on the right team now. Maybe Tyrod Taylor brings a little of that Charles Clay magic to Cleveland and uses Njoku and that skill set to be all that he can be. To take a page from the Army.
Man.
David Njoku is my sleeper tight end that could finish in the top 10.
And I've mentioned his name as you should have picked him up as a dynasty sleeper, but I want to mention it here for redraft sleeper, and that's Luke Willson. Detroit picked him up. He's on a prove-it deal, but the Detroit Lions lost Eric Ebron and Darren Fells, 112 targets, 7 touchdowns. Luke Willson is 6'5", 251. He is bigger and faster than Eric Ebron.
Shut your mouth.
I'm
just saying, please be quiet.
I understand, Jason, that when you see the athletic measurables of Luke Willson, you cannot believe it. But he's going to get a chance. We've seen huge plays from him a few years ago before the Seahawks picked up Jimmy Graham. Maybe this is his chance to break out from the shadow, and I like him as a sleeper.
Can he, if he catches more than 50 passes this year, Mike, will he earn an extra L for his name? Could he get a third L?
You know what?
Because that would be Willson.
No. I'm going. You know how they have the Ks? When you go to the baseball game, they put up the Ks. Every touchdown Luke Willson gets,
you're adding an L?
I'm slapping an L in
the pronunciation for the remainder of the year?
Yes.
Nice.
See, that just makes sense. That's why people come to this show, for things that just plain make sense. All right, that is it for today's episode. Thank you very much for tuning in, subscribing, listening, supporting the show at jointhefoot.com. And please check out draft.com/ballers. You need to play basketball. You need to get that ADP
Draft Luke Willson.
going. And draft Luke Willson.
Wilson. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Fantasy Footballers Podcast. Join our fantasy football community on jointhefoot.com and follow us on Twitter @TheFFBallers.